Good evening, guys. Welcome to another episode of Mike's MMA Picks Fight Evening Breakdown Show here for you. We have a few hours until rosters lock. We're headed to China, UFC Shenzhen, down to 11 fights. Make sure you set your alarm clocks for this one because, as most of you know, 3 a.m. start time on the East Coast. I'll be up watching the entirety of the card. Really looking forward to this one, as I am most fights, especially the main event. Should be one hell of a banger. A few things to look out for before we get started. We have a few fighters coming in as short notice replacements. We have a few fighters who are typically fighting out of their weight class, something to keep an eye on. We'll kick things off with the first fight of the night at 135 pounds. We've got Lara Procopio fighting out of Brazil. Nova União fighter. 8,400 in DraftKings, plus 100 underdog right now. Footage on her has been pretty sketchy. I was able to find her fight against City Rocha, and I was able to watch a few older fights. I'm a bit skeptical of fighters who come in as champions of organizations with a 6-0 record. Granted, there are prodigies out there, though in this case, I watch Lara fight, and she's built like a flabby fire hydrant, and in the fights that I've seen, she's able to land takedowns with her low center of gravity. And once she gets the fight to the ground, she has difficulty maintaining top position. I've seen her get swept from mount a couple of times, which is disturbing. She's going to be taking on Carol Rosa, who comes in with an 11-3 record. She's lost some fights against named opponents. She's 5'6". She's a bigger fighter. Lara typically fights at 125 pounds, only 5'4". Carol, 5'6". She's fought at 146 pounds not too long ago. 7,800 for Carol Rosa. In this spot, as a minus 120 favorite. I'm watching the tape on Rosa, and she has, from what I've seen, the better stand-up. The stand-up for Procopio is just not there. I watched her try to throw some kicks, and Lara has a ground game, but not much other than that from what I've seen. Rosa is a bulldog out there. She fights out of the same camp as Jessica Andrade. In this situation, what I consider to be low-level women's mixed martial arts, I'm gonna roll with Rosa in this spot at 7,800. Brute force may get this done. I think that's what it's going to come down to. This is expected to go to a decision at minus 250, but it's tough to start out a card with such a low level fight here. Next up, second fight of the night, we have Batgarel Dana taking on Haley Alatang. Alatang 7,700, minus 110 at the betting window right now. Men's 135-pound division. Alatang, earlier in his career, fought Song Yadong. He has 4 TKOs on his record, 3 submissions. Alatang, from what I've seen in his fights, typically tries to take fights to the ground. Doesn't really do much when he gets them there. I've seen him submitted in the past. I've seen him TKO'd in the past. Chinese fighter, so he'll have the crowd behind him. Now he's taking on Dana, who he's a bit of a mystery as well. He started his career back in 2011, 30 years old, went 3 years without a fight. So I don't know if that was due to injury or military service. So it's a bit of a mystery to me. At 8,500 for Dana, to me, he's worth a look. It's not going to be landing the takedowns. Reminds me of almost like a zombie in a way. He gets tagged, he gets hit, he gets cut, he gets bloodied, and he still comes forward throughout the fight. Tough to put away. At minus 110, second fight on the card, I am leaning towards Dana in this spot. Went back and watched his fight against Kai Kara France that took place 6 years ago. He was able to take France down and hold him there for the majority of the rounds. This was a very young and green Kai Kara France. So I wonder what type of improvement we've seen. This fight isn't expected to go to a decision at minus 165. So I think you may need a piece of this in DraftKings. So it's a very risky fight. You've got minus 110 on both sides. So I am slightly leaning Dana. He'll be my pick in this spot. Next up, we have the third fight of the evening. We've got a really hotly contested fight between Damir Ismagulov taking on Thiago Moises. Ismagulov comes in with an 18-1 record. Very impressive record. Russian fighter. $9,000 in DraftKings, minus 190 favorite. Moises, only 24 years old. 7,200 in DraftKings, plus 160 underdog. Moises comes in with a tremendous Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background. He was a IBJHF gold medalist. Ismagulov, tough guy to figure out. We haven't really seen him tested. He's kind of just gone through the motions, done what he had to do to get out of there with a victory. So I'm wondering what's going to happen when Moises, if and when he gets a hold of Ismagulov. Ismagulov seems like the smaller, more brittle fighter. Moises is built like a brick shithouse, man. This guy is, he's been working hard at ATT. I was watching Ismagulov also, his training. He did some of his camp at Tiger Muay Thai, and seems like if you're on Ismagulov, you're relying on volume and that he's going to keep the distance. Moises in his debut looked, he kind of looked like shit against Benny Dariush. He pulled guard, ended up going for a guillotine early in the fight, did it again. Benny stuck in his guard for a while, almost finished the fight a couple of times. But since then, Moises stormed through Kurt Holobaugh. This spot, I'm actually going to roll with the underdog here. I'm going to be picking Thiago Moises to get the job done. At 24 years of age, I think we're going to see him use his strength and his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu prowess on the mat to become victorious. So give me Moises to get the job done in that spot. It's going to be easier said than done, though. Next up, we have Light heavyweights. We got Da Un Jung taking on Kadis Ibragimov. Ibragimov. 6'3". Ibragimov, I've watched all of his fights. Strong guy. Sambo background. 9,300, minus 265. Only 24 years old. Coming in on short notice. This is Da Un Jung's third schedule opponent for this card. And I watched the tape. Ibragimov, what I've seen from him, he's got a great chin. He spams these overhand rights and relies on his chin to get the job done. Has amazing throws. Has a great ground game. And Da Un Jung, 11-2 record on a 10-fight win streak. Seems like a pretty dynamic striker on the feet. Only 25 years old, so that Da Un Jung is still developing. We know he throws heavy. The opponents I've seen Jung face, man, hasn't fought legitimate fighters, whereas Ibragimov, fighting on the M1 scene, has beaten worthy opponents. So Ibragimov in this spot should come through. He's going to be my pick. But Jung, fighting at a Korean top team, there are a couple of fighters fighting on this card out of that camp. You talk about a slate buster. We've seen it in the past with Worthy. He may surprise some people out there. I have a feeling he's going to go for broke. He'll need to. Next up, Andre Sukumta, the Asian sensation, taking on Sumajeri. Sumajeri, Chinese fighter, pretty small for the weight class, 135 pounds, except, I'll say this, at weigh-ins, Majeri really filled out since his last fight against Luis Smolka. Both of these guys have identical reach. Fight takes place at 135 pounds. You've got Majeri coming in at 7,600 in DraftKings. He's a plus 135 underdog. One stat that stuck out to me with Majeri is that he has yet to beat a fighter with more than 5 wins on his record. So on his opponent's record. It's pretty amazing to me how somebody like that is now fighting their second fight in the UFC. He entered the UFC coming in off of a loss. Andre Sukumta, 8,600 in DraftKings, minus 155 favorite. Left Hard Knocks 365 and the Black Zillions. Went to ATT. He's been there for 4 months. He's had recent losses to Montel Jackson. Beat Jonathan Martinez. We all remember the O'Malley fight. Remember the Turbo Perez fight. This is a dangerous spot too in some respects. Majeri, from what I've seen, he is not afraid to throw the kitchen sink at his opponents early. He relies heavily on his striking. Seems like a fish out of water on the ground, and he can get muscled. And I expect Sukumta to be able to out-muscle Majeri against the cage, and also if this fight hits the ground. But when I watched the pre-fight interviews, Sukumta is looking for a striking battle. He wants to see whose chin will hold up. That's not what you want to hear, especially with someone who has a suspect fight IQ. You would think he'd want to take this fight to the ground, unless he's not showing us his cards, and that might be the case. At minus 155, I do think that Sukumta is the rightly favored fighter. This is more of a fade of Majeri than anything else. I'm going to be picking Sukumta here. I was a little concerned with Majeri looking like he's filled out, even though he's only 23 years old. He seems to have packed on some muscular weight, and and I'm not sure if that's going to translate inside of the octagon or not. We know he tries to throw heavy strikes when he gets in there. He may be successful, but it's really tough to put away Sukumta. So give me Andre Sukumta. Next up, we have Anthony Hernandez taking on Jung Young Park. Jung Young Park, very, very interesting fighter, fighting out of Korea. His fighting style reminds me of, if you've watched Pride Fighting Championships, there's a fighter, Misaki, who ended up fighting Frank Trigg many years ago. Also had a win over Paul Daly and Dan Anderson. Jung Young Park, well-rounded, can fight well deep into fights. Hasn't really ran out of gas that often. Never been KO'd. 7,400 in DraftKings, plus 135 underdog to Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, who appears to have taken his cardio conditioning seriously this camp. Anthony Hernandez, 8,800 DraftKings, minus 155 favorite at the betting window right now. Fighting out of MMA Gold Fight Team in California. We know Hernandez has hands. He's great at being the hammer, but he's not great at being the nail. When he absorbs punishment, we saw in the Marcus Perez fight, that was a bit of a concern to me. I know he's gone the distance before, only a 6-1 professional record. This is a risky fight. Anthony Hernandez, when you watch the interviews, the pre-fight interviews, really, he's thrown softball questions during interviews, and he seems to kind of screw him up. He's brutally honest, but just the lack of accountability on his part may come back to haunt him. Seems like a guy, he just doesn't give a shit sometimes. He just wants to get out there and bang. And if his opponent wants to try to throw hands and engage in a war, he's willing to do so. He does throw the heavier punches. This fight isn't expected to go to a decision at minus 170. This is a really tough fight to call. The longer the fight goes, Park is going to have an advantage here. Fighting out of Korean top team. I am going to pick Hernandez. I think if he wins this fight, it's going to be inside the distance. He's got to throw the kitchen sink at Park early and get him out of there. Because the longer this fight goes, Park's going to have an advantage. Now, Hernandez has 4 submissions on his resume, but he doesn't. Getting the fight to the ground is the issue. And I don't think he's going to be successful taking Park down. I think he's going to want to throw hands. So, reluctantly, give me Anthony Hernandez to win this fight by knockout. Next up, we've seen a lot of line movement in this next fight. At the men's welterweight division, we've got Kenan Song at 8,200, minus 110 favorite, taking out Derek Krantz. Derek Krantz, 8,000 in DraftKings, also minus 110 at the betting window. Derek Krantz, 24-11 record. He's a journeyman of the sport. We saw what happened when he got to the big show and really emptied his arsenal on Vicente Luque. 3 minutes of it, and then that was the end. 35 pro fights, fighting out of Texas, taking on a Kenan Song who already has a couple of finishes in the UFC. Kenan Song, 14-5 record. One thing that stuck out to me when I watched the footage is Kenan Song is the much quicker fighter, throws more crisp, faster strikes. Krantz is more of a bulldozer and the grittier fighter. I believe also possibly the more durable fighter. This fight, Krantz is actually the fighter with the reach advantage. Kenan Sung, fighting out of China, hometown boy, still only 29 years old. Krantz is 31 now. The longer this fight stays on the feet, I think Kenan Sung is going to have an advantage. He's got to use his footwork here. I saw a lot of people on Krantz. I'm going to be picking Song here to win this bout. Just ugly fight, though. I don't recommend putting your money on this one, but should be a solid fight. Next up, we have Yanan Wu taking on Mizuki Inoue. Mizuki Inoue coming in on very short notice, 5 days notice, to take on Yanan Wu, who has multiple opponents who've been on the docket to fight her for this card. Yanan Wu, 7,900 plus 130 underdog. Wu has fought as high as 145 pounds. Pardon me, 143 pounds I've seen her weigh in at. She missed weight for this fight. Inoue, 64-inch reach. She's at a big height and size disadvantage. She's definitely the more athletic fighter. Inoue, a 13-5 record. Only 25 years of age. She spent a lot of time on the Asian circuit. Originally, before the weigh-ins, I was leaning towards Inoue, and in a way, I still am. No pun intended. Yet the weigh-in is a major concern. The size difference is going to be tremendous, and Inoue can be muscled. She can be out-muscled. She can be held down. And she does take a lot of damage, too. 10-2 record. Yanan Wu is only 23 years old, so she's still progressing. This is somebody who's been in there with Kunitskaya and a few other big fighters. So, you know what? I'm gonna change my pick here to Wu on the spot. I've been debating this for a while, and just the scene on the scale and knowing that Inoue is coming in on short notice is a concern here. So I'm gonna roll with Wu. Give me Wu in that spot. I think if this fight hits the ground, we've seen Inoue on her back for minutes and minutes and minutes at a time, and it could happen in this spot. The other thing is Wu could sit back and try to just jab Inoue's face off. Inoue's got to bob and weave under the tutelage of Ray Longo. We'll see what happens. Very close fight. That's the challenge with this card. This card is a very challenging card to cap because we have so many unknowns here. Next up, men's 125-pound division. We've got Mark De La Rosa taking on Kai Kara-France. Kai Kara-France, 125-pounder. Glad they kept this division around. We've seen Mark De La Rosa get up to 135 pounds. Kai Kara-France has a little bit of a reach advantage here. 9,100 for Kai Kara-France, minus 220 favorite. 7,100 for De La Rosa. Mr. Montana De La Rosa, plus 180 underdog, the Bumblebee. De La Rosa, man, that Alex Perez fight, what can you say? You know, he was totally outmatched in that fight. Um, the Joby Sanchez fight, I thought he lost that fight. Um, I picked De La Rosa in that spot, and I actually thought that De La Rosa, you know, he had the opportunity. It was at his home in Texas, up a weight class. So he was saying that 135 was where he wanted to be, and it just wasn't happening. De La Rosa does have a legitimate black belt. This fight is expected to go to a decision at minus 225. Kai Kara France fighting out of City Kickboxing. We know the kid is lightning quick, loves to scramble. When it's on the feet, he does have legitimate striking, and he's got great cardio. That's something I like to see. He fought Paiva in his last fight, who is an up-and-coming fighter, recently lost to Bontaron. In that fight, I think that's just the culmination of taking on a legitimate unknown fighter in Paiva. I like Kai Kara France to be the more crisper striker in this spot. I think his distance management is going to be a big plus. If this does hit the ground, I am concerned. We've seen Kai Kara France get stuck on the bottom, and you don't want that to happen with a black belt on top of you. 19-7 record. France actually has legitimate experience fighting in China. I got in on Kai Kara France at minus 185. Here he's minus 220 right now. That's a little steep for my liking. But Kai Kara France is going to be the pick. De La Rosa at 7,100. It doesn't look like he's going to get finished according to Vegas. Maybe a decent punt option if you're avoiding the leech. If you think Dos Santos is going to finish. It's a shame we lost the Evliov fight. I was really looking forward to that matchup. We move on. We move on to the co-main event of the evening, my friends. Zaleski Dos Santos taking on Jingliang Li, the Leech. The Leech comes in at $7,000 in DraftKings, plus 235 underdog. 1-inch reach advantage for Zaleski. Zaleski 21-5 record. Somehow hasn't fought a ranked opponent. Zaleski 9,200 in DraftKings, minus 285 favorite. 32 years of age. Lots of tools in the toolbox for Zaleski Dos Santos. We've seen the capoeira kicks. We've seen the submissions. We've seen the grit. I was at Zaleski Dos Santos' fight against Lyman Good. Got to see him really work his magic there. In this spot, you're taking on Zaleski's taking on a fighter in Lee who is going to be coming forward. He's there to be hit. What I found a little shocking was that Lee has never been knocked out in his fights, in his professional career. And Zaleski, although Zaleski hasn't been knocked out, he's been finished more times than Lee has. This fight is taking place in China, and it's not expected to go to a decision at minus 155. Zaleski's very crafty, and he manages distance very well. When he fought Sean Strickland, Strickland had never been knocked out before, and Zaleski kind of hung back and then threw that capoeira kick and just boof, toast. I could see that happening in this spot. I could also see Zaleski towards the end of the round, getting out muscled against the cage, and Lee in the second and third rounds, if it gets there, having cardio and almost a superhuman effort to pull out a victory here. Thought about taking a stab at Lee. The pick's going to be Zaleski dos Santos. He has a few different ways he could do this, but I'm fearful that Jingliang Lee will come forward and give us that superhuman effort that I'd like to see out of him. But the pick's going to be Zaleski dos Santos. Next up, we've got the main event of the evening. We've got Jessica Andrade taking on Weili Zhang. Weili Zhang, 7,500 in DraftKings, plus 155 underdog. Jessica Andrade, 8,700, minus 175 at the betting window. 27 years old for Jessica Andrade. 5'2" with a 62-inch reach. Weili Zhang, 5'4", 63-inch reach. I was on Andrade against Claudia Gadelha, Kovalkiewicz, Tisha Torres, even against Rose Namajunas. I picked Andrade to win all those fights, and she did. This fight, I was hesitant off the bat for a few different reasons. Number one, the Danielle Taylor fight, I don't think we got to see the whole arsenal of Weili Zhang. She came out with leg kicks early, gauged distance, and she admitted she was nervous during that fight. She did get cracked a couple of times at the end of the first and second rounds. Her grappling, as far as I'm concerned, there are a few things that are yet to be determined. She handled Jessica Aguilar with ease. We know Jessica Aguilar is on her way out, although she did lose to Aguilar beat Jody Escobar. Now we're talking about title fights, right? Tisha Torres was coming off of some brutal fights. We saw what Andrade did to her. Andrade, I love the way she fights. She's a relentless savage. That's how I like to refer to her. Not the most technical fighter. Weili Zhang has Andrade beat in spades from a fundamental and technical aspect. The cardio edge, in my eyes, goes to Andrade. Zhang is she's a tough. She's a tough tactical fighter with killer instinct, and I still believe that there's some of her arsenal that we haven't seen yet. You don't want to rely on that when you're capping a fight because you don't know if it's there or not. But even on the regional scene, Weili Zhang was able to finish folks, get them out of there so early. She's great at taking the back, great at chaining submissions together. And Andrade, bulldog, tough as nails. Incredible gas tank, will to win. But in this spot, I mean, we saw what Rose Namajunas. I was not very high on Rose Namajunas. I don't think she's the best fighter in the division. I believe that there are 3, maybe 4 fighters who take Namajunas out. And in this spot in China, when I watched them on the scales and I watched them in the training room. Weili Zhang isn't giving up that much size. I know that there's a strength discrepancy. There's got to be, especially a power discrepancy. I think it's going to come down to early gauging distance. I think Zhang's going to have a big advantage there. I could see Zhang trying to get off on the leg kicks. And I honestly can see Weili Zhang winning a decision in this spot, a 5-round decision. Even though Andrade may have the better cardio, I think that the strikes that Zhang is going to be throwing at her are going to pay dividends. Now, Andrade, I understand where folks are coming from. When this fight was initially announced, I thought it was more of a pick'em type fight. I've seen the odds sway towards Jessica Andrade, and I understand what folks are seeing. I see that as well. But something that stands out to me is the technical aspect of the fight. The left hooks, the straight punches, the low kicks, even the spinning attacks. The diversity is on the side of Weili Zhang, and also she finds a way of taking the back. I would not be surprised if somehow Zhang takes the back of Andrade. I could see a TKO victory for Andrade in this spot. But the pick here for me, I'm going to... It's not that I'm going contrarian. I actually could see Weili Zhang winning this fight, and I do see her winning this fight. Should be a hell of a card, though. I'm going to pick Zhang here. Weili Zhang. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Want to let you know this podcast has been brought to you by BetDSI as well as MMA Oddsbreaker. You can follow me on Twitter at MikesMMAPicks. You can also follow me at CapperTech and BetMMA.tips at MikesMMAPicks. Want to wish everybody a great night of fights. And next up is UFC 242. It's going to be amazing. See y'all soon.